There is belief, and then there is skepticism. And between those two lies a vast territory of questions and the unknown. But what if reality is far more complex than we've been willing to perceive? And what if the stories that we dismissed as myth and legend hold the keys to understanding consciousness? From ghostly encounters to mysterious lights in the sky, humanity has always sensed there was something more out there. Some call it the paranormal, and others call it the divine. Some search the stars for answers, while others look within. They are all connected, threads in the grand tapestry of life. But we stand at a place where the fabric between realities is much thinner than you might think, because this is Crossroads of the Veil. Our journey tonight leads to a New England town of colonial homes and ancient stone walls. This community was far from the world's ugliness, its oldest stories etched on tombstones, its darkest secrets buried under a suffocating suburban calm. It built its identity on the promise of absolute safety. But for 26 hours in the spring of 1977, that safety was broken. The blanket of the ordinary was not merely pulled back, but violently ripped away, exposing something cold, raw, and alien. The carefully built reality of this peaceful town was punctured, and through that hole, a nightmare leaked. It happened without warning. No cataclysm, no screaming disaster alerted the world. There was only a flicker, a tear in reality's fabric, as quiet and devastating as a single stitch, undoing in an old tapestry. For a moment, the world behind our world showed its face. Something appeared at the edge of headlights on a dark country road, where trees crowd close and shadows swallow secrets. It was a brief, impossible silhouette against ancient stones and the deep waiting woods. A blasphemy stepping from the darkness long enough to be seared into memory. It behaved like no known animal and defied biological classification. It was an anomaly, a mistake in the book of life, a creature with no business existing in our world. It had no history before that night and no credible presence since. It appeared from nowhere, a monster born of shadow and headlight glare, and vanished just as completely. A ghost that left no tracks. A nightmare that left no proof but the lasting scars on the minds of those who saw it. It was seen by 4 teenagers in 3 locations over one day and 2 terrifying nights. Then it dissolved, melting back into the night, leaving a handful of terrified witnesses, a few haunting sketches drawn by a trembling hand, and a name whispered in the blood-stained history of the unexplained. This is not a simple ghost story or a straightforward creature feature. Those stories are easy. They have rules. Ghosts are echoes of the dead. Monsters are hungry predators. This is something more complex, more balanced, and profoundly more disturbing. This is a deep dive into a perfectly balanced abyss, a case file on the knife's edge between a teenage prank and a genuine soul-shaking encounter with the unknown. It's a story about our reality's fragility, about perception, memory, and how a single shared trauma can change not just the people who lived it, but the soul of a place, staining its quiet roads and silent woods forever. We will not merely recount the events, we will reconstruct the timeline, second by horrifying second, putting you in the passenger seat of that beat-up orange Volkswagen as its headlights sweep across a stone wall and illuminate a living violation of nature. We will examine the witnesses, not as characters in a legend, but as the human beings they were. Scared kids who stared into the void and felt the need to tell the world what stared back. We will meet the investigators who took them seriously, who saw past the easy dismissal of a hoax and recognized the terrifying pattern of a genuine mystery. From there, we descend into the maze of rational explanations, the comfortable lies we tell ourselves to keep the monsters at bay. We will walk through every plausible theory, from mistaken identity to an orchestrated prank, holding each to the light to see where it holds and where it shatters. Only then, after giving the mundane its due, we will explore theories that live on the fringe, ideas that challenge our fundamental understanding of the world. We will ask the questions that have no easy answers. Was it a visitor from another world, lost, alone, and perhaps as frightened as the people who saw it? Was it a being from another dimension, briefly and violently intersecting with ours like a phantom limb passing through a solid wall? Or was it something else, something older, native to this planet, that has remained hidden in the shadows for millennia, a silent landlord in a house we only think we own? So turn down the lights. Settle in. We're heading back to Dover, Massachusetts, where for one long day and 2 terrifying nights, something not of this world stalked the wooded lanes of a town that thought it was safe. Something that reminds us that the map of the known world is not complete, and that sometimes the greatest horrors are found not among distant dead stars, but on a lonely country road just beyond the reach of our headlights. Dover, Massachusetts, in the spring of 1977, was a picture of quiet peace, a beautiful but fake front. Understanding the event's strangeness requires understanding the town's profound, suffocating normalcy. This was not a town perched on the edge of a haunted forest or built on cursed ground. Dover, deliberately and proudly boring, had no ancient legends of monsters, no dark history of witchcraft. It was a quiet, wealthy suburb 15 miles southwest of Boston, yet a world away from the city's noise and honesty. Dover was an escape. Gentle, winding, tree-lined roads, feeling more like ancient country lanes, defined the place. They twisted with no logic, following paths laid down by horse-drawn carts centuries earlier. Winding stone walls crisscrossed its landscape like the stone skeleton of some forgotten beast. These walls, built by farmers with raw hands and bent backs, gave the town a sense of deep, unshakable history. They were the bones of the town, a skeleton of stone that held its perfect manicured flesh in place. Dover was a bastion of suburban normalcy, a postcard of the American dream. Life revolved around the predictable rhythms of the school year, the changing New England seasons, and the quiet dramas of small-town life. The greatest concerns were high school sporting events or town meeting debates over zoning laws. It was a place where people knew their neighbors, where kids could ride bikes after dusk without a thought, where the deep woods bordering their properties were for adventures, not for fear. It was not a place for monsters. It had walled out the chaos, or so it thought. But the world outside Dover was churning. The mid-1970s was a nervous time in America, a cynical period following the Vietnam War and the Watergate scandal. The long dream of American innocence was over. Watergate, in particular, had shattered the nation's faith in its institutions. Trust in official stories and any narrative handed down from authorities was at an all-time low. People were questioning everything, looking for truth in the margins. This doubt created a cultural void, an opening for strange new ideas. If the president could lie to the entire nation, what else might the powers that be hiding? This question hung in the air like a poisonous fog. Simultaneously, a fascination with the unknown surged through popular culture. The study of UFOs was moving from the fringes to the mainstream. Shows like In Search Of, hosted by the somber voice of Leonard Nimoy, brought tales of Bigfoot and alien visitors into American living rooms. Books like Eric von Daniken's Chariots of the Gods proposed that ancient history was filled with evidence of alien intervention, and they sold millions. Stories of strange lights were now accompanied by terrifying tales of abduction and encounters with their strange, silent occupants. The alien was no longer a distant concept. It was a potential intruder from the stars. On the cinematic horizon, 2 massive films loomed that would redefine modern mythology: a space opera called Star Wars, and a more profound story of humanity's first contact with extraterrestrial intelligence, Steven Spielberg's Close Encounters of the Third Kind. This was a world primed for wonder, a culture anticipating a confrontation with the cosmos, a society ready to look up and ask, what if we are not alone? Against this backdrop of small-town calm and cosmic curiosity, spring arrived in Dover. For the students of Dover Sherborne High School, April of 1977 brought the ritual of spring break, a week of unstructured time, a glorious, maddening void. It was a time filled with restless energy, fueled by the universal adolescent search for anything to do. In an age before the internet, boredom was a powerful, dangerous motivator. It was a physical force, an itch that had to be scratched. It was an engine that drove you out of the house and into a friend's borrowed sedan or your own beat-up Volkswagen. It was a time for cruising, driving aimlessly down dark country roads, windows down, the radio blasting rock music out of Boston. It was a ritual of looking for parties, for friends, for a break in the suffocating monotony. It was a hunt, not for any specific prey, but for a story, something that would make this night different. In this mix of boredom and anticipation, a blend of teenage restlessness and a culture dreaming of other worlds, something answered, something flickered into view. A fleeting, inexplicable presence, a brief tear in the fabric of the normal. An event that would, in the span of a single day, etch the quiet town of Dover permanently onto the map of the world's great unsolved horrors. The stone walls were about to witness something stranger than they had ever seen. The waiting woods were about to reveal one of their secrets. The history of the Dover Demon is a story captured in a bottle, confined to approximately 26 hours. Unlike other legends that span decades, this was a flashpoint, a wound that opened and closed in a single violent spasm. The story is built upon 3 encounters that transformed a personal shock into a confirmed local anomaly, a shared trauma that bound 4 young people forever. It created a story with a beginning, a middle, and an end, all unfolding within a day and 2 nights of escalating terror. It began on a dark, rural road, where the woods press in close. It began on Farm Street. Around 10:30 p.m. on Thursday, April 21st, 1977, 17-year-old William Bill Bartlett was driving his orange Volkswagen Beetle down Farm Street, a road he knew by heart, with 2 friends, Mike and Andy. They were just kids on spring break, listening to a crackling radio talking about girls and cars. The night was normal. As Bartlett drove, his headlights cut a hypnotic path through the darkness. On the left side of the road, the lights washed over a low, broken-down stone wall, one of countless such walls in Dover. He had passed this spot 1,000 times, but tonight was different. Perched atop it, half hidden in the shadows, was a figure. Bartlett's brain scrambled for a logical explanation. A cat, a small dog. As the Volkswagen crawled closer, the figure resolved into something that defied all known categories of life. Its body shape was a biological impossibility. The thought of dog or cat evaporated, replaced by a cold dread that spread like ice through his veins. This was not an animal. This was something else. The encounter lasted no more than 8 seconds. As the car drew parallel with the wall, the creature slowly turned its head. It seemed not startled, but curious. Its eyes flared in the high beams, not the reflective pinpricks of a nocturnal animal, but 2 glowing, round orbs of cold fire. The description Bartlett would give became the legend's foundation. It was small, perhaps 4 feet tall, contorted in a strange crouch on the stones. Its body was impossibly thin, with fragile, disproportionately long arms and legs. It looked like it was made of twigs. Its head was the most shocking feature. Hairless, obscenely oversized, and shaped like a melon stood on its end, a grotesque watermelon or a large pale egg. It was enormous in proportion to its frail body, as large as its entire torso. The skin was a pale pinkish peach color, like something never exposed to the sun. He struggled to describe its texture, settling on the horrifyingly specific wet sandpaper. On that massive head, there were no discernible features, no visible mouth, no nose, no ears. It was a blank canvas of flesh dominated by 2 enormous, round eyes that glowed a hellish orange. Bartlett said they shone out of the darkness like 2 orange marbles, luminous and terrifyingly vacant. There was a cold, alien intelligence in that gaze. As the car sped past, Bartlett's artist's eye caught one final detail: its fingers. They were impossibly long and thin like tendrils, grasping the rough stones of the wall with an obscene familiarity. Then the car was past. The figure was plunged back into darkness. A strangled cry escaped Bartlett's lips. "Did you see that?" he yelled. His friend, lost in conversation, had seen nothing. The moment belonged to him alone. Shaken, his heart hammering, he drove on for nearly a mile. His friends, sensing his genuine panic, peppered him with questions. Their skepticism faded as they saw his face, pale with a terror that couldn't be faked. At their urging, a mixture of disbelief and fearful curiosity, he turned the car around. He had to know. He drove back slowly, knuckles white on the steering wheel, and scanned the stone wall. The creature was gone. The absence was almost as frightening as the presence had been. It meant the thing he saw was real, and it was now somewhere in the night, watching. When Bill Bartlett arrived home, the carefree boy who had left hours earlier was gone. His father, a prominent lawyer, saw his son's profound distress. This was genuine shock. Bill tried to explain what he had seen, the words tumbling out. Possessing a natural talent for art, Bill knew words were not enough. He felt a desperate need to get the image out of his mind and onto paper, to prove he was not crazy. He sat at the kitchen table, hands still shaking, and produced a sketch. The drawing is now iconic. A spindly, large-headed creature with massive dead eyes, its long fingers gripping a rock. On this drawing, anticipating the ridicule to come, he inscribed a desperate oath. I, Bill Bartlett, swear on a stack of Bibles that I saw this creature. The story could have ended there, but it didn't. The creature was not done with Dover. 2 hours later, a mile from Farm Street, the second chapter of the nightmare unfolded. It was after midnight on Friday, April 22nd. 15-year-old John Baxter was walking home along the lonely stretch of Miller Hill Road. He saw a small figure approaching in the gloom. Baxter's first reaction was recognition. He mistook the figure for a neighborhood acquaintance, a younger boy with a medical condition that resulted in an unusually large head. This rational attempt to place the figure in a known category makes what happened next even more chilling. He was not looking for a monster. He called out his friend's name. There was no reply. The figure kept coming, its gait strange, a jerky shamble that was not human. When it was only 15 feet away, Baxter realized this was not human. In that instant, the creature darted off the road, scrambling down a wooded gully with inhuman speed. Curiosity, more powerful than caution, took over. He followed it to the edge of the gully. At the bottom of the ravine was a small creek. The creature had already crossed. He heard no splash, as if it weighed nothing, and had stopped about 30 feet away by a tree. There, silhouetted against the dim light, John Baxter got a clear, horrifying look. His description, given independently of Bartlett's, was a stunning match. He saw a small, slender body with long, thin limbs. He saw an oversized head, which he described as figure 8-shaped, a subtle variation that feels authentic. He could see its long, thin fingers wrapped around the trunk of the tree. Then he saw a bizarre detail. Its long toes were, in his words, molded around the top of a rock it was standing on, like a bird of prey gripping a branch. The creature simply stood there, motionless, staring back. Baxter felt a primal fear take hold, the ancient terror of seeing a predator in the firelight. It felt, in his words, like it was waiting to spring. That was enough. He backed away slowly, then turned and ran, not stopping until he was safe inside his home. He too would produce a sketch, another attempt to capture the nightmare. Suddenly, it was not one kid's story, it was a pattern. The final piece clicked into place the following night, Saturday, April 23rd. 15-year-old Abby Brabham was in a car with her boyfriend, 18-year-old Will Tainter, on Springdale Avenue. Her eyes caught something crouched by the roadside. Her description aligned perfectly with the others. She saw a creature with a tan-colored, hairless body and the now familiar large watermelon-shaped head. But her testimony included one significant variation: the color of its eyes. While Bartlett had seen orange, Abby described them as glowing green. She astutely clarified this, noting it could have been a reflection from the headlights. This self-correcting detail speaks volumes. It is the hallmark of a traumatized memory trying to be accurate, not a sensationalized tale. Her boyfriend, Will Tainter, also saw the figure, though his view from the driver's seat was not as clear. He could only confirm something deeply unusual by the road that made the hair on his arm stand up, terrified. Abby screamed at him to speed away, and he floored it, leaving the figure behind. Then, as suddenly as it had arrived, the creature vanished. It has never been reliably seen again. When you plot the three locations on a map, Farm Street, Miller Hill Road, and Springdale Avenue, you discover something unsettling. The points form a nearly straight line spanning just over 2 miles. It suggests the deliberate path of a single entity. Moving methodically through the Dover landscape, the story was now complete. The question was, would anyone believe them? In the light of day, such a story is a fragile thing. The legend of the Dover demon rests not on physical proof, but on the scarred shoulders of 4 teenagers. There has never been a shred of physical evidence. No footprints, no hair samples, no photographs. Only their testimony remains, a persistent ghost in the record. What makes this story so powerful is who these witnesses were. William Bartlett was not just any teenager, he was an artist. An artist possesses a trained eye, a sensitivity to form and detail a casual observer lacks. He registered the head's alien shape, the limb's impossible length, the skin's diseased texture. His mind was wired to observe and record visual information with higher fidelity. His compulsive decision to sketch the creature was the single most important action in the legend's formation. It gave the formless terror a tangible artifact, a piece of data that could be studied, a face for the nightmare. Without that drawing, the story might have remained a vague anecdote. With it, the monster became real. In the years that followed, Bartlett has maintained his story with an unwavering, weary consistency. He has never tried to profit from his experience, never sought the spotlight. He carries the memory not like a trophy, but like a scar, a reminder of a wound that never healed. One credible witness is not enough. The matching accounts of John Baxter and Abby Brabham transformed Bartlett's incident into something real. Critically, these were not all close friends who might plan a hoax together. They moved in different social circles. This social distance makes their nearly identical descriptions all the more compelling. They lacked the time or connection needed to align their stories in such grotesque detail, suggesting they were all describing the same, externally real, horrifying thing. Then there was the quiet assessment of local authorities. The Dover police chief was in a difficult position. Officially, his department was dismissing the sightings as a probable school vacation hoax, the simplest explanation, the one that would cause the least panic. But privately, he was telling investigators something different. He consistently described the witnesses as reliable and good kids. They were not known troublemakers. This informal endorsement from a respected figure reframed the narrative from a wild monster story to a story about four good kids to whom something strange and terrible had happened. Even that might have faded into local gossip. One man forged the story into an enduring legend, Loren Coleman. Within days, word reached Coleman, an established and respected cryptozoologist, a studier of hidden animals. Coleman was not a wild-eyed sensationalist. He was a trained social scientist with a background in anthropology and psychiatric social work. He approached these mysteries not with blind belief, but with a rigorous academic method. His arrival signaled that this event was being taken seriously. He traveled to Dover and conducted in-depth interviews with the witnesses and their families, treating them with respect. He assembled a team of other researchers, most notably Walter Webb, the assistant director of the Hayden Planetarium at Boston's Museum of Science. The involvement of someone from a major scientific institution lent even more credibility to the investigation. This was no longer a collection of scary stories. It was a formal inquiry. Coleman's systematic approach was crucial. He treated the teenagers' accounts as eyewitness testimony to be collected, cross-referenced, and analyzed. He separated core facts from emotional trauma. Then he made his most impactful contribution. He gave the creature a name. Until then, it was just the creature or the thing. Coleman, understanding language's power to define the unknown, coined the memorable, catchy name that made the story famous, the Dover Demon. The name was potent, a masterpiece of branding, even if the creature's behavior had not been overtly demonic. It had not attacked anyone. It had merely observed and evaded. But the name stuck. It was catchy, scary, and easy to remember. Without a name, there is only a story. With a name, there is a monster. Finally, Coleman published his findings. He canonized the story in his seminal book, Mysterious America. This act moved the Dover Demon from the fragile realm of a spoken story into the permanent record of cryptozoological literature. It was now an official case file, an indictment of reality that could be debated for generations. Thanks to the courage of 4 teenagers and the diligent work of one researcher, the demon was here to stay. For every investigator who sought to validate the mystery, another sought to extinguish it. Skeptical inquiry is necessary, an antidote to unchecked belief. It forces us to exhaust all conventional explanations before we leap into the abyss. Occam's razor, the principle that the simplest explanation is often best, offers a comforting shield against the terrors of the unknown. And for a monster sighting by teenagers, the simplest explanation is a hoax. The context seems perfect. Teenagers on spring break, a time notorious for pranks born of boredom. What better way to liven up a dull week? This theory was bolstered by a detail Loren Coleman himself reported. A teacher at the local high school told him Bill Bartlett was the sort of kid who would pull a prank like this. It's a classic piece of anecdotal evidence that seems to support a clever deception. Under scrutiny, however, the hoax theory develops serious problems, feeling less like a shield and more like a blindfold. First, the key witnesses were not part of a single group. Orchestrating a coordinated 26-hour prank involving separate social circles would have been remarkably difficult to pull off without a single leak. Furthermore, the lie would have had to be incredibly detailed and consistent from the start. The witnesses gave their accounts independently, yet all described the same core set of bizarre features. Then there is the longevity of their testimony. For over 40 years, not one of the four has ever broken ranks. There have been no deathbed confessions, no lucrative tell-all interviews. Their lifetime behavior is consistent with people who endured a traumatic event and are tired of being defined by it. The hoax theory requires us to believe in a sophisticated teenage conspiracy and a lifetime of silent commitment to that lie, all for the fleeting thrill of a prank. Viewed that way, the hoax seems less simple and more improbable than the monster itself. If not a hoax, what about mistaken identity? The most common candidate proposed is a newborn moose calf. A young moose is indeed strange looking. It's gangly, with spindly legs, and a head that can seem disproportionately large. In the dark, seen from a moving car, could one be mistaken for something sinister? This theory collapses under the weight of specific details. A moose, even a calf, has a long, unmistakable snout. All witnesses were explicit that the creature had no discernible nose or mouth. A moose has large, floppy ears. The witnesses were certain the creature's head was smooth. A moose is covered in thick fur. The creature was described as hairless, with pale skin. Most critically, a moose has hooves. Bill Bartlett described long, tendril-like fingers grasping a stone wall. John Baxter described long toes that molded to a rock. These descriptions are irreconcilable with the anatomy of a moose. Geographically, the theory is even weaker. In 1977, there was no established moose population in that part of Massachusetts. To believe the moose theory, you must ignore almost everything the witnesses said they saw. This leads to the most sophisticated misidentification theory from skeptical investigator Joe Nickell, a snowy owl. At first, this sounds absurd, but Nichols' argument is a masterclass in rationalization. He suggests Bartlett saw a large snowy owl perched on the stone wall. An owl's large round head and huge forward-facing eyes could, he argues, appear as the demon's oversized cranium and its glowing orange orbs. The peach color of the skin could be the reflection of yellowish headlights on the owl's white feathers. Cleverly, he suggested the long, spindly arms and tendril-like fingers were a misinterpretation of the owl's partially unfurled wings and splayed feathers. It's a compelling argument that works reasonably well for Bartlett's static sighting. But the owl theory hits a brick wall with the other sightings. It is extremely difficult to reconcile a perching owl with Baxter's detailed description of a bipedal figure that approached him on the road before running into the woods and standing upright by a tree. Owls hop or fly. They do not walk down roads. The theory cannot account for the movement, posture, and terrifying behavior Baxter described. This brings us to a psychological explanation from investigator Ben Radford. He suggests the sightings were a product of the cultural moment, a mass hysteria in miniature. In 1977, the cultural soup was thick with otherworldly images. Radford's theory is that the teenagers saw something ambiguous, a deer, a trick of the light, and their brains, primed by the culture of the time, automatically filled in the blanks with what they wanted to see. An alien. It's an elegant theory that acknowledges the witnesses' sincerity while dismissing their experience. But it too struggles to explain the unwavering consistency of the details. Why would 4 different people interpreting 4 different ambiguous things in 3 different locations, all independently invent a creature with the same set of highly specific grotesque features? Why the hairless peach-colored body? Why the thin limbs? Why the massive watermelon-shaped head? The consistency of the core description remains the biggest challenge to any psychological explanation. The skeptical explanations, as rational as they are, all seem to fray when stretched across the full tapestry of the 26-hour enigma. They are comforting lies we tell ourselves in the dark, desperate attempts to pretend the monster is not real. When rational explanations crumble, we must confront the difficult ones, theories that embrace the strangeness, that stare into the abyss unflinching. This requires a leap of imagination, a willingness to entertain possibilities that lie outside the confines of mainstream science. For a case this strange, such a leap may be a necessity. The most prevalent paranormal theory is that the Dover demon was an extraterrestrial. This theory is fueled by the creature's striking resemblance to the archetypal gray alien of UFO lore. The large head, huge glowing eyes, frail body, and pale hairless skin. It's a textbook match for the beings described in countless abduction stories. In fact, the Dover demon can be seen as one of the earliest wild encounters with a gray-type entity. Seen outside the confusing context of a bedroom abduction, it was simply there, walking through the woods of Massachusetts. This theory provides a neat box for its bizarre appearance. It was not a moose or an owl because it was not from Earth. Its biology was alien. But this compelling theory has one glaring flaw. In all the strangeness, one thing was conspicuously absent: a UFO. There were no reports of strange lights, no silent craft hovering over the trees. The creature was encountered on foot, like any terrestrial animal. If it was an alien, where was its ship? An alien without a spaceship is in many ways just a creature. And that, perhaps, is even more terrifying. It suggests it was not a visitor, but a castaway, marooned on a hostile world. This invites more mind-bending explanations. To account for the creature's sudden appearance and disappearance, some have proposed it was not from another planet, but from another dimension. This hypothesis suggests the existence of parallel realities, thin membranes of space-time existing alongside our own. On rare occasions, the barrier can weaken or be breached. In this model, the Dover demon was an interdimensional entity that temporarily bled through into our world, an intrusion from a reality with different laws of physics and biology. This would explain why it was never seen before and has not been seen since. It did not travel here from the stars. It was a ghost in the cosmic machine, a temporary visitor that slipped through a crack in the universe and then slipped back out. A more recent and perhaps more chilling framework is the cryptoterrestrial hypothesis, CTH. Championed by authors like Mac Tawney's, this theory suggests that some anomalous encounters may not involve visitors from the stars or other dimensions, but a non-human intelligence native to Earth. The idea posits that an ancient species may have evolved alongside us, or perhaps before us, but did so in secret in the dark and hidden places of the world. They might be a civilization that retreated underground millennia ago, or one that lives in the crushing depths of the ocean. They are Earth's hidden cohabitants, the true landlords of this planet. We are just the noisy tenants who moved in much later. The Dover demon case fits this model with horrifying precision. It describes an encounter with a non-human being in a terrestrial environment disconnected from any aerial phenomena. The creature's behavior, observational, non-aggressive, and elusive, is exactly what you would expect from a member of a hidden society whose secrecy has been breached. When spotted by the clumsy apes on the surface, its primary instinct was to flee, to retreat back into the shadows to protect the secret of its existence. Under this hypothesis, the Dover demon was not a lost alien or a dimensional ghost. It was one of our planet's original owners, a member of a native intelligence that became lost or careless on a rare foray to our world. This theory transforms the mystery from a monster story into a profound clue. It suggests the event was not an intrusion from the outside, but a revelation from within. It suggests that we are not alone on our own planet. We are merely the noisy tenants, blissfully unaware of the silent landlords living in the walls. What if the Dover demon was just the latest name for something that has walked this continent for millennia? A being recorded not in scientific journals, but in the sacred stories of North America's first peoples. To find the answer, we must leave the manicured lawns of Dover and travel deep into the spiritual heartland of the Nehiyawak, the Cree people. Here, in the vast expanse of the Canadian Shield, history is a living presence, woven into songs and stories. And along the riverbanks, in the churning rapids where water and stone collide, dwell the Managishi, In the folklore of the Cree First Nations, these are small, trickster spirits, and their physical description, passed down through generations of oral tradition, is specific and shockingly familiar. Across hundreds of miles and dozens of distinct but related cultures, the Cree, the Ojibwa, the Métis, the description of this river spirit remains chillingly consistent. They are always described as small, about the size of a child, paired with an unnerving body shape, impossibly thin with lanky arms and legs, giving them the appearance of a creature made of sticks. Their head is their most shocking feature, grotesquely oversized, round, and bulbous. On this massive head is a narrow face that is almost completely blank. The most frequently mentioned trait, the one that freezes the blood, is the complete lack of a nose. Some stories say they also have no mouth. It is a smooth, featureless mask of flesh, dominated by two large, dark eyes. To complete the monstrous image, some traditions hold a final bizarre detail. The Managishi have 6 long, slender fingers on each hand. They are tied to a very specific habitat, the place where water meets rock, and are said to move through solid stone as if it were smoke. The link between the Dover demon and the ancient Managishi legend, first made by cryptozoologist Lauren Coleman, is built on a foundation of impossibly specific parallels. The physical body, the Managishi is a small, child-sized being with long, thin limbs. The Dover demon was described as about 4 feet tall with a spindly body. The head. The Managishi is known for its massive, round head. The Dover demon's most prominent feature was its huge watermelon-shaped head. The face. The Managishi is defined by its lack of a nose. The witnesses in Dover were certain the creature they saw had a blank face with no visible nose or mouth, only 2 large glowing eyes. The hands. Bill Bartlett's most vivid memory was of the creature's long tendril-like fingers gripping the stones of the wall. John Baxter saw its long fingers and toes wrapped around a tree trunk and a rock. This perfectly matches the long, slender digits of the Managishi. The habitat. The Managishi are spirits of rock and water. The Dover demon was first seen perched on a stone wall. The other sightings all took place in wooded areas near creeks and ponds. The events in Dover seem to be a crucial moment where an ancient mythological being was captured by the modern world. The witnesses, who had never heard of the Managishi, described a creature that perfectly matched its centuries-old description. They saw it not through the lens of folklore, but through the modern lens of science fiction, calling it alien-like. Centuries earlier, a Cree hunter seeing the exact same thing would have known instantly what it was. The creature remains the same, only the names we call it have changed. This connection transforms the Dover demon from a one-time anomaly into a modern echo of a much older and more widespread terror, suggesting that these beings, whatever they are, have been observing us from the shadows for a very, very long time. After the witnesses have been heard, the skeptical theories debated, and the ancient folklore explored, the Dover demon remains a profound and unsettled mystery. It is a splinter of the impossible lodged in the flesh of our reality, a wound that refuses to heal. Decades of debate have yielded no consensus, no easy answer that satisfies all the strange evidence. The case remains a perfect, maddeningly balanced enigma, a question mark carved into the landscape of American Forteana. The skeptical explanations, as rational as they are, consistently fail to account for the consistent, specific, and strange details of the testimonies. To believe them, you must accept a level of coincidence that strains belief to its breaking point. You must choose to believe that 4 separate, reliable teenagers all misidentified different things as the exact same bizarre monster in the span of 26 hours. You must choose to be blind to the strangeness. On the other hand, the paranormal explanations, while fitting the horrifying descriptions more closely, require a leap into the extraordinary for which no hard evidence exists. They ask us to believe in aliens, interdimensional beings, or hidden races, all based on the testimony from one strange weekend long ago. The case remains suspended in this perfect, terrifying equilibrium between the mundane and the miraculous. Perhaps the true significance of the Dover demon is not in what it was, but in its perfection as a modern legend. It was a perfect storm, a rare convergence of elements that created an unforgettable story, It had a series of bizarre, compelling, and tightly clustered sightings that gave it a clear narrative. It had a small group of credible, consistent, and sympathetic witnesses who never changed their story or sought to profit from it. It had the timely validation of a respected expert who gave the creature a memorable, powerful name. And finally, it had a core description: the watermelon head, the glowing eyes, the spindly body, so bizarre that it resonates with archetypes both ancient and modern, from the Kree-Managishi to the gray alien. Unlike other cryptids like Bigfoot, the Dover demon has no history before April of 1977, and no credible sightings since. It does not appear to be a species. It was not a recurring monster. It was a bizarre flashpoint, a 26-hour ripple in the fabric of suburban reality that left an indelible scar on our collective imagination. It exists today not as a solved case, but as a singular data point of high strangeness, a testament to the enduring power of an unsolved mystery. The story reminds us that the world is still full of shadows, that we have not mapped every corner of existence, and that our science, for all its power, is still a flickering candle in an infinite darkness. And it is a chilling reminder that even in the most quiet, normal places, the unknown can flicker into view at the edge of the woods, stare back with glowing orange eyes, and leave behind nothing but questions that will haunt us in the dark for the rest of our lives. As we step back from the crossroads, remember, the story doesn't end here, because this is just the beginning. Searching for the knowledge and wisdom to unravel the mysteries of our universe. Unexplained sightings, spirits, and science. They are all connected in the grand tapestry of life. So remember, keep pulling at the threads, because this has been Crossroads of the Veil.